Hi, welcome to the Elle Russ Show, where I deliver content intended to inspire, educate, and motivate. Engage with me online at elleruss.com and on social media. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we have one of my favorite authors and just personalities in general, Arielle Ford. She is the leading personality in the personal growth and contemporary spirituality movement. For the past 30 years, she's been living, teaching, and promoting consciousness through all forms of media. She is a celebrated love and relationship expert, speaker, and the co-creator and co-host of Evolving Wisdom's Art of Love series. She's also a gifted writer with more than 10 books, including her international bestseller, The Soulmate Secret, Manifest the Love of Your Life with the Law of Attraction. And she's written also many groundbreaking books, including Turn Your Mate into Your Soulmate and Wabi, Sabi, Love. And wow, so happy to have you back on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. It's so much fun to be with you.
So for the people that don't know about how you got into this, can you tell us, what were you doing before you became someone who really used the law of attraction to manifest soulmates?
Well, I actually learned about manifestation in the mid-'80s and sort of took to it like a duck to water. And I used it to build my business. Back in the 80s and 90s, I was in the publishing industry. I was a book publicist and a literary agent, and I specialized in self-help and new age and spirituality, and along the way worked with Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, Louise Hay, Neil Donald Walsh, Don Miguel Ruiz, pretty much all the superstars of that genre. I was very fortunate to work very closely with them for a long time. And one morning I woke up really early and I was lying in bed and I had my eyes closed and I was feeling around the bed looking for my 25-pound cat. And the bed was empty and all I could feel was this big expanse of sheet. And I had this epiphany, which was, oh my God, I forgot to get married. And I started thinking, how did I get to be 43 and never married? I was living in LA. I had a successful business. I was in great shape. I had lots of friends, but no husband. So I decided to use every single prayer, process, ritual, tool that I'd ever used to manifest my career and apply it to my love life. And it worked brilliantly. Within a year, I met the most amazing guy. We just celebrated our 23rd wedding anniversary. And what happened right after that was every single woman I knew over 40 started asking me, how did you do that? How do I get a Brian? And so I started sharing my process with them, and it worked for all of them as well. And to make a super long story short, it actually became a career. I started writing and teaching, and the process has now worked for tens of thousands of men and women in like 60 countries. The book is in 41 countries and 22 languages. And I just fell into it. It was never on my to-do list to become a love expert, but that's what happened.
And talking about meeting Brian, that story is great because it's also unexpected. You didn't go out searching for it. You weren't trying to make it happen, other than the spiritual work you were doing on the inside to create the vibration to bring it in. Can you kind of share how it was that you met him? Because it was not necessarily like an accident per se, right? It was divine timing. No, it was very interesting.
Yes. No, it was very deliberate. So essentially what I first did was I got to clarity. I got extremely clear about the heart traits and qualities I most wanted my soulmate to embody and the type of relationship we would have. And then I created a list, and then I created a ritual to release the list to the universe. And then I created a process for myself that I call a feelingization that I did every single day. So lots of people know what visualizations are. Visualizations are pretty pictures in your head where you're trying to imagine yourself in the future having something you say you want. But what I've learned is that visualizations don't really work because you could be visualizing, oh, I want a new BMW convertible with leather interior, and I can see myself driving down the 405 and my wind blowing in the hair, my hair blowing in the wind and all of that. But if on an emotional level, your feeling state is, I can't afford it, I don't deserve it, I'll never have it, you will never get it. So a feelingization takes you from your head down to your heart, and it begins with a process I learned from the people at HeartMath, where you go into a heart lock-in, you put yourself into coherence and relive experiences of love and appreciation and gratitude. And from there, you drop in the desire of what it is you'd like to manifest, because true manifestation comes from the heart. So I started doing that every day. And somewhere between 9 months and a year, I met Brian. I wasn't tracking it then because I had no plans to write a book or to teach it. But it totally worked for me, and it works for other people. And there's many more parts to the process, but that's the short version.
Yeah. And I think this goes to one of the misunderstandings about using the law of attraction, probably with anything, which is what you just said, which is you can visualize it. You can wake up every day and write down, I'm grateful for my legs, I'm grateful for my eyes. But unless you're stopping to feel the feelings of that gratitude, right? Because if we really were to sit here today and go, because you and I both have our eyesight, and we really focused on how grateful we were for that, it would probably bring us emotionally to tears of gratitude, right? But I think people are so busy doing the list, putting the vision board, and like you said, not doing the feelingization. Can you give our audience sort of why it is a feeling universe and not a thinking universe, and how that is really the way to activate it?
Right. So let's talk about the quantum science of all of this. So in quantum science, we know a couple of things. We know that there is no future, there is no past, there is just this now moment. We also know that we all live in the field. We all live in this collective field, or what Greg Braden calls the divine matrix, where we are already connected to everything and everybody. So your soulmate is not missing because they already exist in the field in the now moment. So if you go into the field, you can connect with them on a heart level if you're willing to drop into a space of love and appreciation into your heart first. Now, how do you do that? You do that by calling up a memory or experience. So, let's say you have a cat or a dog that you really love, right? And you just focus on your heart and you remember what it's like to stare into the eyes of your pet. Everybody's done that, right? You know what that's a fast.
That's like the most unconditional love ever, right?
right. So you're or it could, if you don't have a pet, looking into the eyes of a baby. And you can recall that feeling of love and connection. That's the place to start from. So holding your attention on your heart, re-experiencing a feeling of love or gratitude or appreciation, really allowing yourself to be in the now moment, in the presence of this love. Then you can drop into talking to your soulmate. I call it love before first sight. And on my website, I give away all these feelingizations for free. And there's one called the Golden Cord. And in the Golden Cord feelingization, you're in your heart, you're re-experiencing love. You send a golden cord of light into the field, into the ethers, into the inner plane, to the heart of your beloved. And you start talking to them every day through this golden cord, telling them you're now open, willing, and available to have them show up in your 3D world. And you start the relationship today. So if you go to my website, it's soulmatesecret.com. There's a tab called Free Stuff. And in the free stuff, you can find the golden cord feelingization.
I love that. I interviewed one of your buddies, Peggy McCall, who I love. And she's great. And I love her story of meeting her husband when she set her mind to it. She was telling her friends, and, of course, I'm sure you know the story, but they were like, all right, so what are you going to do? Go to bars? And she's like, nah. And she's like, what are you going to do? Go online? She's like, nah. And then someone said, well, what do you think? He's just going to show up at your door? And, the story goes, but actually he did.
Right. But I tell that story all the time, but it's with a caveat. You need to know that Peggy McCall was already a master manifester.
True.
Okay, so if you're not a master manifester, there are other ways to meet your soulmate on the physical 3D plane. But if you're just hoping, wishing, dreaming they're going to knock on the door, chances are the men knocking on your door are going to be UPS, FedEx, the gardener, the water delivery guy, the mailman.
Right. Tell us too, we were talking prior to getting on here, and you mentioned that you really feel that even though people are saying, oh, this time in life, this pandemic, restrictions with travel, all of this stuff, it's so tough to meet someone. And you were saying, and I too have known people who have really found love in the time of this pandemic. Tell us why you feel like it's never been easier.
Great. And this is the truth. It has never been easier because so many people have now gotten clear that they absolutely don't want to spend their life alone. So they're on the dating apps, and the dating apps are designed to make it safe for women to vet people faster. You no longer need to leave your house. In fact, I won't let any of my clients meet somebody in the real world until they've had at least one video date with somebody where you get to see them and feel them. And I actually give them the questions to ask to vet them to see if they even want to do a second video date or if they even want to leave the house. So for instance, you can go on multiple sites and you can start putting your profile out there. And I have a free online dating guide we can talk about in a minute, which tells you exactly how to write the profile, what kind of pictures to use, how to do all this safely. And then on your video date, the first question you want to ask someone, whether it's a man or a woman, is, who were you with during lockdown? You want to find that out because you're immediately going to find out their status. Oh, are they divorced and living with their ex to homeschool the kids? Are they living alone? Do they have multiple roommates? This is not the kind of question you would ask live in person in Starbucks as the first question. The second question you're going to ask is, what was the best part of lockdown for you? Did something good come out of it? Mm-hmm. See if they have a way to spin whatever it was. And the third question is, on a lot of levels, the one that vets them for emotional intelligence. What was the hardest part of lockdown for you?
Yeah.
Now you're going to find out, can they be vulnerable? Can they really share? And of course, you're going to answer these questions as well. And then by now you're, 10, 15 minutes into the call, and you can determine, is there a flow here? Do I want to keep talking? Or, do I already know enough to know that, this isn't going anywhere? So I've had lots of clients who have met people this way. Some are now married and got married during COVID. Some just decided, they did a lot of video chatting and they met outside for walks with masks on. Now they're living together. But we've all learned how to shop online. We're shopping for a mate online.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the sort of pandemic prizes. While I feel that there has been many, I think one of them has been sort of how comfortable and of ease everyone was with doing like a Zoom meeting for an initial meeting, during lockdown. And I've done video interviews over Zoom and things like that. And I actually found that so helpful because even though you're not in person and that can be different, there still is an essence when you're looking at someone there live on the screen that I thought was just so great. And I thought, well, gosh, it's too bad this wasn't happening regularly before the pandemic, but what a gift that is, especially if someone lives an hour or two away, et cetera. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Now, the other thing that's come out of all of this is, if I had looked at, let's say, your wish list in January 2020, and then looked at it in January 2021, my guess is it will have changed. Mm-hmm. Your priorities will have changed. The kinds of things you're looking for in a potential long-term partner. So I always tell people, when you're writing out what your must-haves and your deal breakers are, really think about, if we go into lockdown again, and my prediction is we will, what kind of person do I want to be sharing a home with? What are the qualities this person needs to have? Like, I know for sure I would want somebody who's really good at self-soothing. Like, you don't want to be with somebody, let's say, you have some guy who's used to pumping iron 2 hours every day in the gym and suddenly, can't go to the gym and is used to burning off all their stress that way and doesn't have any other, skills to do that. Or you might want somebody who who isn't afraid to tackle home repair projects. I mean, there's practical aspects. There's somebody who's, willing to, help you in the kitchen or learn how to cook or perhaps do all the cooking, so things have really changed as to, what we thought was important or what was important to us 2 years ago versus looking towards the future and going forward, what kind of lifelong best friend do you want to be living with?
Yeah. And I obviously, as you know, the pandemic was interesting in a lot of ways for couples, right? Realizing again, life is short. I'm with the wrong person. Perhaps that was in a lot of people's minds and that ended the relationship. Or also, what about this? So I don't have FOMO, fear of missing out. I'm not one of those people. But I think a lot of those people had a reckoning a little bit because they were put in a position where you're sort of forced to enjoy your own company. And if you don't, you're probably going to go nuts. And, I felt like when the quarantine and lockdown happened, I was like, oh, I've trained for this. I'm good. I felt totally fine about it. But I know there were some other people, right, and I think that's one of the most important qualities that I seek in someone as well, as someone who, has the ability to enjoy their own company, who doesn't necessarily get their self-worth or their enjoyment just from outside external stimuli. Can you maybe touch on that conundrum?
Yeah, and I think that's where Zoom has been so helpful because we had to learn new ways to socialize. One of the best things that came out of this is that there are 2 groups that I meet with on Zoom every week of people that I used to see twice a year at different kinds of meetings. And now I don't think I'll ever go back to the in-person meetings because we have this deep, rich, continuous relationship, regardless of where anybody is in the world.
Yeah.
So I think technology has really helped out that way. I mean, yes, there's nothing ever is going to replace live concerts and live music, but in terms of socializing, we have opportunity.
Yeah. How do you personally define a quote soulmate?
I believe a soulmate is first and foremost somebody you can completely be yourself with, somebody with whom you share unconditional love. And when you look into their eyes, you have the feeling of being home. So if you accept that definition, the truth is we all have many, many, many soulmates, whether it's your parents, your kids, your siblings, your friends, your coworkers, your cats, your dogs. And the only difference with a romantic soulmate is that, you have the added bonus of, chemistry and a shared vision for the future together.
What are some of the most important things to know about men that women need to know?
Well, men are actually simple creatures on a lot of levels. And if you understand how they operate, you can get along with almost any of them. So there was a study done many years ago with 80,000 men. And what they discovered was that out of the 80,000 men, something like 78% of them, their number one priority is more than sex is respect. Mm-hmm. So men need to feel respected. The other thing is, in order for a man in a relationship to be happy, he needs to know he can make you happy. So if you're constantly bitching, moaning, whining, and complaining, he is always in the feeling of losing. Mm-hmm. And that includes if you're complaining about your own body. If you're constantly talking about, my ass looks fat in these pants, or I hate my thighs, or I need to lose weight, that is bad for his ego because he chose you. So he's losing when you're complaining about yourself. And when you have to have the hard conversations, it's good to have really excellent communication skills. So men tend to be pretty linear. You can't go to them with a list of complaints. If you have something you need to talk to them about, the first thing you want to do is in a very kind, sweet, gentle voice, say to them, I have a problem I need your help with. Do you have 10 minutes to talk to me sometime today? What would be a good time? And then when you get their attention, you just, frame the whole thing as, here's my issue and here's why it's an issue for me. And what do you think we can do about it? And then shut up, stop talking, and let him answer. And then when you come to agreement, that's it for the day. You don't pile on. You don't bring a whole long list of things, because they want to make you happy, but they need to understand why you're unhappy. So screaming, yelling, bitching, moaning will absolutely get you nowhere. But being kind and sweet and using a good tone of voice and being open and willing to compromise will.
Yeah. And also, like you said at the end there of that discussion you were proposing, is giving them the opportunity to solve the problem, which is to, hey, how do you think we can work on this, or whatever that last thing you said, which is great, which is that's sort of the mode they're often in, is like, okay, there's a problem, let me solve it. So I like putting it in their hands and waiting to see what they might come up with, which could be different than what you might think they should do.
Right. And, the other part of all of this is, I wrote a book called Wabi, Sabi, Love. And Wabi Sabi is this ancient Japanese aesthetic that seeks to find beauty and perfection in imperfection. And so women tend to be, fault-finding machines. We're always looking for what's wrong. We're always seeing what's wrong. And the truth is, you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. They're not perfect. Nobody's ever going to be perfect. So what we should begin doing is wearing rose-colored glasses and always looking for what's right. So in an ideal world, you're constantly looking at your partner, noticing what's right about what they're doing, and then acknowledging them for it, appreciating them for it. And if you do this every day, you won't have time to look for what's wrong, because it takes time to pay attention to another human.
Right. And you're not advocating for, obviously, like ignoring and being in denial about, like, obviously abusive behavior, of course. But this brings me to, of course, you're, turning your mate into your soulmate. What about the couples that have struggled over the pandemic, or in general have realized, I don't think I want to be in this, and they have a downer attitude about it? What are some of the things you can offer to them as far as, not giving up on a long-term relationship and, possibly being able to turn it around? Where do we start there?
Well, the first place to start is with the statistics. So we all know that 50% of first marriages end in divorce. Okay, that's just facts, common knowledge. What most people don't know is that 62% of second marriages and 71% of third marriages end in divorce. So getting divorced is not necessarily the answer, but rebooting and reigniting your relationship is. So, one of the places to start, of course, is professional counseling. If there is bad behavior, if there's abuse, addiction, lying, cheating going on, then get a professional. If not, the place I would start is by realizing you don't have to have we need to talk conversation. That's the cancer conversation. That's like, you've got cancer, you're going to die. We need to talk is threatening and scary. So what I would do is take responsibility to begin the healing process. And one way to do that is by sitting down and making a list of all the fond memories from the early part of the relationship. Write down all the wonderful things they said and did, that you did together, that you'd admired about them, that you liked about them. But write as many good memories as you possibly can. And then turn those into a beautiful, gushing love letter. Just stunning love letter. And then put it in a beautiful I love you just because card. And then put the card someplace where they're going to find it when you're not around. So that's a peace offering to begin with. That will start a conversation, to look and see, yes, a lot of stuff is built up. Things have been really difficult. Take baby steps, do little baby steps. What's a kind thing you can do today? Could you begin giving your mate 5 affirmative things every day that they do that you notice about them? Find ways to appreciate the beauty and perfection in their imperfections. Because as you do this, they will automatically begin doing it too, but not knowing why. So that's a place to start.
I love that. And tell us how people can go from annoyed to enjoy, about their their partner's idiosyncrasies.
Yeah.
I have a friend who her husband just is for 20 years. He leaves crumbs everywhere. He's just he's crumbs. He's a crumbs guy. And she keeps getting annoyed, but I keep saying, hey, look, you're going to have to find a way to like accept this.
Okay. But yeah. So I was and still am to some degree the person who leaves crumbs. So what happened was when Brian and I first got married and were living together, you know, half the mornings I'd walk in the kitchen and he'd have a scowl on his face and he'd say to me, you know, why is your coffee cup from yesterday still in the sink and why are there crumbs around the toaster? And I'm like, well, you know, the coffee cup will get there someday, and I didn't see the crumbs. This went on to the degree that every time I walked in the kitchen, it's like, oh no, what did I do now? And then one morning I walked in the kitchen and he had this goofy smile on his face. And I said, what's going on? He said, I got up in the middle of the night to get a drink of water. And I saw your coffee cup in the sink and I saw the crumbs around the toaster. And I just fell even more in love with you. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, I realized this is my problem. I'm the one who's disturbed by this. So I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to cleaning up after you because you're just a sloppy, messy person. So that's one story. That's an example of going from annoyed to enjoyed. He changed the story. You know, he made up a new story about it. I had another woman in one of my workshops when I was having them do Wabi, Sabi love exercises. And she stood up and she said, well, I have a problem even you can't solve. And I said, what's that? And she said, well, my name's Stephanie, and I've been married to Garth for 16 years. And I'm a super clean, neat freak perfectionist. And Garth is a chaotic, messy slob. And I don't think I can take it anymore. And the only reason I think we're still together is that he has an out-of-state job. So 2 weeks of every month he's gone. And while he's gone, the house is clean and it's pristine and it's just the way I like it. But then within hours of him coming home, it's a mess again. And I just can't take it. And so I said to her, well, Stephanie, do you have a dog? And she said, yes. And I said, does your dog shed? And she said, yes. And I said, well, what do you do when the dog sheds? Oh, I vacuum up after him. I said, okay. I said, well, do you love your dog? And she got really quiet. And then she said, oh my God, Garth sheds. And in that moment, she got it. Just like the dog can't help shedding, Garth can't help being a slob. That's who he is. So I thought that was a great story. But when I was writing Turn Your Mate into Your Soulmate, I wanted to get back in touch with her to find out, was this a workshop aha moment or did something really change? So this happened at the Sun Valley Festival, something or other I was teaching at. And I called the promoter and I said, listen, I have to track down a student that was in my workshop and I know her name, but I don't know how to find her. And I told her this story and she said, oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. Here's her number. So I called this woman, Stephanie, up. And I said, I just wanted to check in. How are things with you and Garth? And I kind of expected her to tell me they were divorced. And what she said was, things have never been better. Mm-hmm. In fact, things got so good that he quit his out-of-state job to start an at-home business. And we're together 24/7. And we've never been happier. And yes, he's still a slob.
Love it. Yeah, just changing her perspective in the situation. And when you change like that kind of negative daily, like, oh, there goes the crumbs again. It's just, again, you're giving yourself these downer hits that are only going to spiral, right? Versus the rose-colored way of looking at it, or a way to mitigate it and dance around it like your husband and like she did with hers. Tell us, what are the components, do you think, of a long and happy marriage, or using your own as an example?
Yeah. Oh, actually, they know. It's been studied. So there are 5 components to a long, healthy, happy marriage. The first one, and these are not in any particular order, is communication. Good communication can be learned. Connection, compatibility, chemistry, that's pretty much the least important one, but you need to have a little chemistry. The single most important predictor of a long, healthy, happy marriage is a shared vision of the future. You both want the same things. whether it's you both want kids, you both want to live at the beach, you both want to live at the mountains, you both want to have home businesses and be together 24/7, or you definitely don't want to be together 24/7. So having the shared vision for the future is the most critical part.
Tell us some, you've already mentioned a few, but you've worked with so many people, changed, thousands and thousands of lives out there all over the world. What are some, 180 examples that pop up, like sort of like this woman who came to you and was like, oh, well, this is beyond help, or I've been searching. You had one story, I think you told me about someone who went on like 80 dates, but the 81st one, so.
Yes. That was my friend Liz. So Liz was 49 years old, ran a very successful business, never married, and she decided that she was going to spend 1 year dating on Match.com, and if at the end of the year she hadn't found her husband, she was going to put a second mortgage on her house and spend $100,000 on a matchmaker. And Liz went on 79 first dates in a period of 9 months. And number 80 is the man she's now been married to for 7 years.
I love that.
Now that's so 9 months may sound like a long time. I had another woman who had done one of my workshops several years ago, or read my book when it first came out. And her story was remarkable. She became a widow at 52 and started dating online. And over a 10-year period, she had over, I think she said 500 dates off of online dating over 10 years. During that time, she had 3 different relationships. Each were between 9 months and 2 years. And then finally, in year 10, she met and married her soulmate at 62. So she just never gave up.
I love that. Yeah, perseverance pays in almost every endeavor. And I love those stories like that. Tell us, I think there's people out there. I think sometimes I love watching, like the home renovation shows, right? You see these stranger couples, then they're going to do their house. One of the reasons I love watching some of those shows is I love looking at the couples. And I think sometimes it is such a great example of like, oh my gosh, there's someone for everyone. I get very inspired sometimes by the couplings you see that seem like, oh, that seems interesting, or I wouldn't have guessed that, or look at these 2 different people, different looks, whatever it is. And I think there's people out there that feel like, well, I'm in a wheelchair, there's no one for me, or I've got a, cleft palate, or whatever the physical disability is, whatever the issue is. Talk to us about that, because there's someone for everybody, that I definitely know. And I think it's so discouraging for some people who feel different, or maybe not a 10 on the scale of beauty, etc. So talk to us about some of the experiences you've had with people in there.
Yeah. So there's definitely a lid for every pot. Actually, there's multiple lids for every pot. And I have one friend, his name is Alex, and Alex was born with one leg. And when he was a child, he was literally the poster boy for Variety Children's International for disabled kids. So the one leg was probably the least of the issues he was born with. And now he's almost 30 and he lives in New York City. He's a talk show host, a radio talk show host, and he gets around the city on his one leg. He's on a rollerblade, and then he has crutches, and he takes the subway and gets through the city that way. And one day he was maneuvering through Times Square on his way to work, and a photographer took a picture of him. I don't remember the photographer's name, but he's pretty well known. He has a website and a book called Humans of New York, where he tells stories about the different people who live in Manhattan. So he told Alex's story, and it ran on Facebook. And this woman who was a little bit overweight saw it and friended Alex on Facebook, and they ended up dating for 2 years, and really had quite the love affair. And I don't remember why they broke up, but Alex now has a new girlfriend who is 100% wheelchair bound, and they were just in LA last week they traveled from New York to LA because he wanted to take her on a vacation. She had never traveled on a vacation in her life. So he, so there is somebody for everybody. Also, there was one of my clients she was divorced in her 40s with 4 sons, 2 of whom had various disabilities, went online, found a man in his 40s who had never been married, always wanted kids. During the pandemic, they dated during the pandemic, and then they got married a few months ago. And she sent me all the wedding pictures. I have another friend who has 2 autistic nonverbal kids that are now in their late teens, who hasn't been able to date for years, but ended up meeting a man who lives on the other side of the world. They video chatted for a whole year. He is going to be on a plane in 2 weeks to move to marry her. So they will be getting married virtually sight unseen, except for video chats, and he can't wait to help her with her kids. So, you can make up all the stories that you want. I'm too old, I'm too fat, I'm too damaged, all the good ones are taken, I tried online dating, it didn't work for me. You can accept all of that, and all that will get you is you're going to get to be right, and you're going to get to be alone. Or you can start to manage, you can start your own emotional management and just trust and have faith that there's somebody out there for everybody. And yes, online dating has a lot of downsides to it. 90% of the people you're going to connect with are going to totally suck, or they're going to ghost you, or you're going to have a bad experience. And it doesn't mean that the one isn't out there, because this is the way to become visible. This is how you can meet that one. My friend Evan Mark Katz, who's a brilliant, brilliant dating coach, uses this analogy. He's like, I'll ask you, have you ever been to a restaurant and had a bad meal?
Yep.
Okay. Did that mean you quit eating?
Definitely not.
Okay. So that's what it is. Bad things will happen online. It's a guaranteed thing. You're going to have disappointing experiences. And that's not a good enough reason not to use the technology that can absolutely deliver to you what it is your heart desires.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, again, if you've had a round of some of these discouraging things, and then you sort of get into that mindset, it's important to catch yourself and turn that around and be like, hey, I'm dealing with the public here. There's all sorts of people. Not everyone's going to be a hit, and getting back into the space of being open versus like, oh, everyone who emails me is 500 years older, all of these sort of downer. And now I've done online dating before. And one time I remember there were all these people contacting me that were really just way out of what I would have ever considered. And I remember sort of being a little bit then downery about it and shifting my mindset to when someone would come in like that, I would just be like, I would think to myself, you know what, good for them. Like, I hope they find someone wonderful, or like, I'm flattered anyway. And just kind of turning it into a positive thing versus looking at some photo and going, oh God, there's some like 80-year-old who, whatever, it just kind of being a downer on it. I think we're going to come across that. And it's important to shift the mindset when we start to feel like it's become a negative. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a client the other day who's been pretty successful dating online and has generally a really good attitude. And she had a video date with this guy, and it went well. And he was very eager to meet her in person. And so they ended up going for a beach walk and meeting in person. And then she sent me this whole long email of all the reasons why, he just wasn't right for her, which was all valid, right? But then he sent her an email telling her all the reasons he thought she wasn't right for him. And she immediately started feeling rejected. And she said to me, I can't believe he's rejecting me. And I said, what is the matter with you? He just did you the biggest favor.
Yes.
He detailed the same thing you were thinking. He saved you the effort of having to let him down gently, because it was a beautiful note that he wrote. It was very respectful. But basically they saw that they just weren't a good enough match. But she automatically went into, I've been rejected.
Yeah. And that, I tell a story in my second book, Confident as Fuck, about dating. And a couple things. One is where a friend of mine was getting excited to meet a girl that he talked for 2 hours with. They had a great conversation. He was getting excited. And he had past issues with insecurity and trust and things like that. And I remember him saying, oh, I've got that date tonight. Like, I hope she likes me. And I said, oh, hold on. I was like, how about we just shift it a little bit around to say, I hope that I like her. I'm excited to find out about whether this person is right for me. Going into a date, trying to impress, right? That's sort of, it's for you too. And then on the other side, there was a woman years ago who said, gosh, this online dating stuff's so depressing. It's all this rejection. And I said, well, what do you mean by rejection? And she's like, well, I emailed these men. No one responds. And I said, well, what if you found out that these men were not even the pictures they posted, or they beat their last wife, or had a conviction rap sheet, with crimes? Like, would you feel rejected, or would you feel like you dodged a bullet? And
Right.
it's just so interesting how we project onto strangers what they may or may not think of us, and use that to, again, affect our self-esteem in a negative way. So I think it's important to have the right mindset going into this. And if you catch yourself, right?
But the other piece of this, and nobody talks about this, and this isn't mine to talk about, but maybe it's yours. People are addicted to suffering.
Yep.
Okay. It's a true addiction. They're looking for ways to feel bad about themselves. And I don't have, I'm not a therapist. I'm not trained to do this, but it's an observation that I see over and over again. They just want to live in this pity party. And, as we all know, happiness is a choice. Right? It's not a birthright. It's a choice. You get to choose. I'm going to choose to be happy. I'm going to figure out what I need to be happy, and that,
instead of simmering in victim mode and continually telling the story as to, well, I'm this way because of that. And that may be true partially, but there's a way to change it. And I think people don't understand they have that power, which you do. And that's all of your teachings. And on that note, I want to talk about just whether it's manifesting a soulmate or manifesting in general, this I've been there. And I know what this is like, where you're like, where is it? Which is such resistance, which is not faith in that it will show up, and almost making and probably prolonging that process. Can we talk about that? You get what I'm saying.
Yeah, because there's a couple elements in there. There is the divine timing. So I had this client named Cynthia, who had been divorced for like 20 years and, did my workshop, did every love workshop on the planet. And then, and she would always call me up saying, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? And I would say to her, you're not doing anything wrong. The day that you meet him, I promise you're going to find out why it took so long, and he will be worth waiting for. So 3 years after she did my workshop, she called me up one day and she said, you were right. She's like, I love that. That's my favorite word. You were right. I said, great. Well, what was I right about? Because I didn't remember. And she said, I met him and now I know why it took so long. And it turned out that his wife had been dying of breast cancer for many years. 6 months before they met, she had finally passed, and he was now ready and available. And I danced at her wedding, and they just celebrated their 6th or 7th anniversary. So it was true. So you have to keep living as if, knowing and trusting that what you've asked for is already yours, which means that if you're going to, run to Home Depot at 7 o'clock in the morning, you better be looking decent. I talked to Jan Van Sant about this one day, because she told this story about how she needed to go to Home Depot at 7 in the morning to get something. And she threw on a baseball cap, no bra, a sweatshirt, flood pants, and flip-flops, and went to the Home Depot, not knowing 7 in the morning is when all the best looking men in town that are working construction are in the Home Depot. And all she's seeing everywhere are these hunky guys. And so she's pulling the baseball cap down on her face, and she gets to the checkout line, and she gives the woman her credit card, who reads her name on the credit card, knows who she is, and starts screaming, oh my God! Oh my God! Yeah! And she realized at that point she should never leave the house without looking in the mirror, which is my advice to all single women everywhere. If you're going to leave the house, look in the mirror, okay? Because you don't know who you're going to meet and where you're going to meet them. So start living as if. Walk out the door knowing and trusting that the one could be the person in line in front of you at Starbucks or at TSA at the airport where one of my clients met her husband.
Yeah, you know, it's so funny because I would go to the grocery store and it would often be after I'd work out or whatever. And, you know, my hair is in a bun. It's no lip gloss, whatever, just looking like kind of garbage. And, but then one time I was coming home from an audition or something and I had, you know, makeup and was looking my best. And I noticed that the guy that I'd always ordered my coffee from at the Air One Market had never once even looked at me, said hi, just was whatever. And I didn't care. And I wasn't attracted to him necessarily, but it was so interesting. It was like the first time I show up and I wasn't with my hair in the bun and the whatever baseball cap. His like just interaction with me was so like, hey, how you doing? Like it was a totally different story. And I wanted to be like, hey, bro, I've been coming here for 5 years. And this is the first time like I'm the same person. It was just amazing. I got better customer service. It was like such a game changer. And I was like, okay, maybe I need to rethink my grocery store runs, because then that would be my story. Like, oh, well, no one hits on me at the grocery store. And it's like, well, okay, but I wasn't necessarily in the vibe. And it's not just to say that the outward appearance wasn't great. I wasn't in the vibe, right? I'm not feeling that way when my hair's in a bun and I'm not exuding that kind of vibe where I am when I have a little bit of lip gloss on or etc.
Exactly. Because when you feel good, you look good. I mean, when you look good, you feel good, right? So your energy level's different. And by the way, I have one friend who met her husband in the produce department of Whole Foods 15 years ago. So you don't know when or where. So you should just be living at, hey, I like me and I'm up for anything, and be friendly. Be friendly with everybody.
Yeah. Tell us, in sort of wrapping up here, there's so many ways to connect with you. Aside from your books, you have so much free stuff, as you mentioned, on your website, Soulmate Secret. And there's also, you always have a free webinar that you do, and then you offer private coaching now, I see. So can you tell us some of the ways we can connect and get more of this juicy stuff from you?
Well, if you go to my website, soulmatesecret.com, definitely go to free stuff, get some of the free stuff, sign up for my newsletter. Every Tuesday, I send out lots of love tips. I am doing private coaching. That information's up on the site. And, beyond that, I'm on social media and I'm easy to find. I'm always around and I love talking about love.
What are some lasting points or things that we might not have covered, which is probably many, that you can think of to give people hope out there and to inspire people to get on this mission? Because I think, time goes by and like you said, then we're like, oh, damn, wait, I forgot to do this.
Well, I think that is the point. Like, now is the time. There's no, everything in the world is so uncertain right now. You don't have to put it off and wait. There's a lot of people thinking, oh, well, when I lose 20 pounds, then I'll be ready to date. Or when I get over my XYZ anxiety, then I'll be ready to date. Now is the time to do it. Who you are is enough right now. Your soulmate is going to love all your insane parts, and you're going to love all their insane parts. So you don't need to lose the weight, because we know the truth about losing weight is 90% of it for most people are going to come back anyway. And the average size wedding dress sold in this country is a size 16, not a 2, a 4, a 6, or an 8. So this thing that I have to be skinny to have love is not true. It's just a way to keep you safe and not on the market. So get visible, get out there, take advantage of the dating app, get my free online dating guide that's on my site, soulmatesecret.com. It'll walk you step by step and show you how to do it. And then just be brave and bold and start doing it.
Do you have any preferred dating apps from what I know you haven't been on in the past 20 years? But
yeah. Well, if you're looking to get married, the app that I see the most results from, far and away better than anything, is Match.com. So I would say definitely be on Match and then pick one other. Definitely be on two. But the thing that they're showing is that people who meet and marry online have a higher success rate than people who meet organically in terms of whether or not they divorce.
And I wonder if that is because there's so much pre-information that you get on Match, right? Like, if someone wants kids or not. Which if you met someone at the grocery store, maybe that would be 3-4 dates in, or maybe you would forget to bring it up. Is that why you think? Because there's more pre-screening answers?
I think that might be a part of it. I think it's because the people that are taking the time, and it is time consuming to date online, are very serious about wanting to share their life with somebody. The people who just want to hook up, well, there are apps for hookups. Match is not an app for just a hookup. So if they're on something like Match, where they are sharing a lot of information and a lot of photos, and mostly you're spending some amount of money to be on the site, then you're serious about wanting a connection with somebody.
Yeah, there definitely is something to the paid service and being like, okay, well, I'm serious about this enough to invest some money into it. That could be different than, like your Tinder or your Bumble, etc.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you so much. Always love speaking with you, always inspired by you. And everybody go check out Arielle's website, soulmatesecret.com, get that free stuff. And love it. Thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you, Elle. You're doing such a service in the world with all the stuff you do. So I'm grateful to know you.
Thanks so much. And everyone else, we'll see you next week.
Hey listeners, over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products, and I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.